In this lesson, we're going to learn how to divide decimals using grids. In my first example, I'm going to look at my first number. The first number is the amount that I have. So I'm going to start by shading 6/10. So I know that is 6 rows. The second number tells me what I want to put in each group. So looking at 3/10, I'm going to count 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, and make a group. And I'm going to do that again. 1 row, 2 rows, 3 rows, so 3/10, make another group. So the first number told me that I had 6/10. The second number tells me that every time I have 3/10, I need to make a group. And my answer is how many groups I was able to make. So I made 2 groups. So 6/10 divided by 3/10 is 2. And I could check that with the algorithm. And I know to divide by decimals, I'd have to use the power of 10 to move my decimal. So this is the same as 6 divided by 3, which is equal to 2. The next example, I'm going to look at the first number again. 8/10 is what I have. So I'm going to shade 8 rows of the 10. So now I've modeled 8/10. The second number tells me how much I need to put in each group. So every time I count 2/10, I'm going to make a group. So 1 row, 2 rows, that's 2/10. There's one group. 1, 2/10, there's another group. 1, 2/10, there's another group, and 2 more tenths makes one more group. So my answer is how many groups I was able to create. 1, 2, 3, 4. So my answer is 4 groups. And I could divide it with the algorithm, or I could check it with multiplication. I know that if I do 2/10 4 times, 4 times 2 is 8, 4 times 0 is 0, and with one number behind the decimal, my answer is the same thing that I started with, 8/10. And in our third example, I noticed that the first number that I'm going to model is 75/100ths. So this time I need to be shading 75 squares, or 7 rows. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then I'm going to shade 5 squares. Now, when I look at my second number, I notice that this is 5/100ths, which means that this time, instead of making a group every time I count 5 rows, since I'm counting hundredths, I'm going to make a group when I count 5 squares. So there's 5 here. And now I can do the top 5. And it may be a little bit difficult to see on here, but I know there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 groups at the top. 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 total groups. So my answer is 15. And I can check my answer with multiplication. If I have 5/100ths, 15 times, 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 0 is 0, plus 2 is 2. Down row, add a 0. 1 times 5 is 5. 5. 7, and there are 2 numbers behind the decimal, and that is same as 75 hundredths, which is what I started with. These last 2 examples show how to model a decimal divided by a whole number. So, similar to what I was doing in the previous examples, I'm going to start by shading 8/10, and I know that's the same as 8 rows. Now, my second number is a whole number, and so in the previous examples, we were putting the number in that many groups. In this example, because I have a whole number, they want me to take 8/10 and divide it into 2 groups. So my grids underneath the examples are my groups. This is group 1 and group 2. Now, I notice that I have a lot of rows. So I could count square by square and give 1 square to each grid. But since I have so many, I could probably start by giving a full row to each grid. So 1 group gets a 10th, 2 groups get a 10th. So that's 1/10, 2/10 that I've used. And I have a total of 8/10. So 1/10, 2/10, 3/10, 4/10, 5/10, 6/10, 7/10, 8/10. So I had 2 groups, and now my answer is how many were in each of my groups. So if I look at group 1, there are 4/10 shaded, and the same in group 2. So each group got 4/10. And if I check it with the algorithm, 2 goes into 0, 0 times, 2 goes into 8, 4 times. So my answer is correct. Now let's look at 99 hundredths divided by 3. So once again, I'm going to model 99 hundredths, and I know that means 99 squares, or 9 rows and 9 squares. And this time I'm going to divide it up between 3 whole groups. So I have 3 grids, group 1, group 2, and group 3. And once again, I could go square by square and give each of my groups a square. But since I have so many rows, I'm going to start by giving each grid a row. So 1 row, 1/10, 2/10, 3/10. So 3 of my rows have been given away. Now I'm going to keep going. 4/10, 5/10, 6/10. So now 3 more of my rows are gone, and I still have enough to keep giving a grid a whole row. 7/10, 8/10, 9/10. So now these 3 rows are gone. So now I just have 9 squares left. So that means that I'm going to have to start giving each grid a square until I run out. So 1 square, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And to find my final answer, I need to look and see how much is in just one of my groups. So how much did each group get? Well, this group got 3 rows and 3 squares, which I know is 33 hundredths. So each group got 0 and 33 hundredths. Our next example is 1 and 8/10 divided by 3. So I know I need to shade one whole grid. And I'm going to shade 8/10 of a grid. 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have represented the first number, and I know the second number tells me how many groups I need to make. So 1, 2, 3 groups, and I'm going to start by giving each group a full row or a full tenth. So 1, 2, 3. So 3 of these have been given away. I have enough that I can keep dividing out rows. So 4, 5, 6. I can keep dividing rows. 7, 8, 9. So I still have several more rows to give out. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and I have exactly 3 rows left. So 16, 17, 18. So now my final answer is I'm just going to pick one group to look at and how many rows are shaded in this group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows or 6/10. So my answer is 0 and 6/10. And I can check it with the algorithm or multiplication. 6/10, if I do 3 groups of 6/10, 3 times 6 is 18. 3 times 0 is 0, plus 1 is 1, and there is one number behind the decimal. So I would end up with a total of 1 8/10, which is what I started with. Our last example is going to have whole numbers and hundredths. So I'm going to start by shading 2 and 44 hundredths. So I know I have 2 whole grids shaded. And 44 squares, or 4 rows and 4 squares. And I know my second number tells me how many groups I need to break that amount up into. So there are my 4 grids. Now I have plenty of rows, so I can start by giving each grid a row. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And if I look at it as 24/10, I actually have 24 rows I can give out. So I'm going to keep counting until I get to 24. So I'm at 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. So right now, since I've used 20 rows, I know 10 were in my first box and 10 were in the second. So I've gotten rid of those first 20 rows, and I'm down to my last 4 rows in the 400ths. So I have enough left that I can give each grid 1, 2, 3, 4 rows. And now I'm down to just 4 squares, or 400ths. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So for my final answer, I'm just going to pick one group to look at. And I can see that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows were shaded and 1/100th. So that's 61/100ths. So 2 and 44/100 hundredths divided by 4 is 0 and 61 hundredths. And I can check it with multiplication. If I did this amount in each group, and there are 4 groups, 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 6 is 24, 4 times 0 is 0, plus 2, and there are 2 numbers behind the decimal, and 2 and 44 hundredths is what I started with.